state that the testimony you may give and the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. May I please have you state and spell your first and last name for the record?
James, James, Rosenberg, Rosenberg.
Perfect. Thank you. You may take a seat. Please watch your step.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself for the jury.
My name's Dr. James Rosenberg. I'm a licensed medical doctor in California. I specialize in psychiatry.
Can you please outline your professional education for us?
Yes, I studied philosophy and molecular biology at UC Berkeley. I then did a year of surgery research at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, including coronary laser angioplasty research. I attended medical school for 4 years at UCLA. I then did an internship in primarily specialties of surgery and cancer medicine, including neurosurgery and cardiothoracic surgery. I then did a 3-year residency at the UCLA Neuropsychiatric Institute in psychiatry, and I did a fellowship in forensic psychiatry at the Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland with a Dr. Philip Resnick.
Okay, and what licenses and board certifications do you hold?
So my license is to practice medicine in the state of California. I have a lifetime board certification in psychiatry. In 1996, I got my second board certification in forensic psychiatry, a subspecialty of psychiatry involving the legal system. That's every 10 years. I renewed it for another 10 years until 2016. And then due to a very bad experience I had in a criminal case, my wife and I decided I wouldn't renew it again and I would stop doing criminal work.
Okay, can you please briefly summarize your professional experience as a psychiatrist?
Yes, so after I completed my training and came back to my fellowship, I became assistant director of psychiatry at the West Los Angeles VA Medical Center and ran the locked psychiatric intensive care unit at UCLA Teaching Service and was there for a few years. I was a member of the UCLA Medical School faculty for 16 years. After I left the VA, because my forensic consultation practice started to get busy, I always continued to see patients at least one day a week unrelated to any legal matter. Most recently, it was 22 years at a nonprofit community mental health clinic in Van Nuys, providing psychiatric evaluation and treatment of homeless and low-income individuals. My forensic psychiatry practice, the first half of my career was primarily criminal cases, approximately 200 murders, mass murders, serial criminals, and other types of major crimes. The second half has been primarily civil litigation matters of brain injuries, catastrophic physical injuries with PTSD claims, and employment-related matters. I've consulted over the years to the United States Attorney in Washington, D.C. on organized crime in the Eastern District of New York, for the Medical Board, the Attorney General, and also for 8 years I was a consultant to the show Law and Order Special Victims Unit.
Thank you. Your Honor, I would like to show Exhibit 220 to the witness. Dr. Rosenberg, it's Exhibit 220 in the blue binder.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm at 220.
Are you familiar with this document?
Yes, this looks like the first page of my resume or curriculum vitae.
And can you please flip through it and let me know if that's a true, correct copy of your CV?
Yes, this is the most current version, last updated February 2023.
Thank you. Your Honor, defendant moves to admit Exhibit 220 in evidence.
Objection, Your Honor. I object to that at this point. Based on what? Foundation. Over.
Have you been retained as an expert on behalf of the defendant Cardi B in this case?
That's my understanding.
And what is it that you were asked to do?
I was asked to conduct a psychiatric evaluation of Ms. Ellis's emotional injury claims related to the incident on February 24th, 2018.
Have you served as a retained expert in previous cases?
Yes, both criminal and civil matters, probably over my career, maybe 1,500 times.
Experts are paid for their time. What is your rate that you charge for the time that you spent working on this case?
So I charge, my base rate is $550 an hour, which is for reviewing records, my face-to-face examination of Ms. Ellis, scoring the psychological testing, and writing a report. My rate for testimony in deposition, which was taken in this case, or trial like today, is $800 an hour, and there's in 4-hour blocks.
Does your fee depend in any way on whether your opinion is favorable to Cardi B?
No, that's never been the case. And for example, I've never worked on the lien, which does involve that type of interest from my non-attorney standpoint.
Do you recall approximately how long you've been engaged on this matter?
I believe it's been since early 2023.
Okay, and how much have you charged in this matter over those 2.5 roughly years?
Well, for reviewing the records, which I've had to re-review, and additional records, examination, the psych testing, my report, preparing for deposition with Plaintiffs' counsel, I think I've thus far charged something a little over $30,000.
Okay. And I believe you testified that you conducted a psychiatric evaluation of the plaintiff as part of your duties in this case. Is that correct?
Yes, so the psychiatric evaluation is, to me, a broader term. That consists of the triad of reviewing records, conducting a face-to-face examination, and scoring and utilizing the psychological testing that was administered during that examination. So it's a matter of integrating and correlating and weighing the information from those three sources.
And can you please, in just a little more detail, explain what happened during that evaluation in this case?
Certainly. So I believe it was in July, maybe around July 21st, 2023. So it took about, I would say, roughly 6 hours. The entire examination was audio recorded. And the first half of the examination was the administration of the psychological testing, where using gold standard psychological tests, I provided them to Ms. Ellis. I was there with her the entire time and made sure she understood the instructions, and then she filled out the answering sheets, circles or bubble and answer sheets as she went along. The second half of the day was the interview, and in accordance with generally accepted principles, whether it's a patient care clinical setting or forensic setting like this, the interview involves a wide variety of background areas in order to establish a baseline, some of these risk and resilience factors for developing a psychiatric disorder. So it includes, for example, a brief developmental history, education growing up, employment, social marital relationships, medications, general medical history, substance use history, if any, whether there are any family history of any psychiatric or medical conditions that are relevant and carry a genetic risk for Ms. Ellis, as well as legal issues like workers' comp claims. So a variety of background areas, and then to establish that baseline in detail, what Ms. Ellis was like, let's say in the month or so before the incident in this case, then a brief discussion of that incident, and then in detail tracing the onset and course of her reported emotional and other symptoms and how that's affected her, and in the context of also correlating that with her real-life day-to-day function and any health care that she sought out and received.
Okay, and based on that examination, did you reach any conclusions with respect to whether the plaintiff suffered a mental or emotional injury as a result of her encounter with Cardi B?
Yes, I did reach an opinion, as with all my opinions, I reached an opinion with reasonable medical probability in that regard.
Thank you, and what was that opinion?
My opinion is that there is no significant evidence that Ms. Ellis sustained an emotional injury at any point in time in this case, from the time of the incident to present, with the understanding that an emotional injury, from my standpoint, consists of the onset of one or more psychiatric diagnoses in accordance with the American Psychiatric Association's guidelines or criteria, or the substantial worsening if there was a pre-existing disorder, and that in my opinion, Ms. Ellis has never qualified for that in this case.
Thank you. I believe you testified that one of the parts of your examination was psychological testing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you please briefly explain what those tests were?
Yes, so again, what's very important is first the choice of tests. I use gold standard tests that are well validated scientifically and recognized as appropriate tests for this context. So the purpose of the test is that first they have validity scales that look at how somebody's approaching taking the test and what information that says generally about how the individual may be approaching reporting an emotional injury claim, as well as on the test specifically. They then include a variety of clinical scales: anxiety, depression, PTSD, physical symptoms, substance use, cognitive symptoms, meaning things like memory, attention, concentration, personality, psychosis, a variety of factors like that.
And can you please identify what tests you administered?
Yes, so I administered the MMPI-3. It was either the MMPI-3 or the MMPI-2-RF. Those are the current ultimate gold standard tests. You have to pass that test. For example, to fly a passenger jet, to be in the Secret Service, you have to pass that, or the other test I gave, for example, to become a law enforcement officer in California. So I gave the MMPI-2-RF or the MMPI-3. I gave the only other gold standard test of that type, the Personality Assessment Inventory, or PAI. And then something that's very secondary is I gave a brief screening cognitive test, simple 10-minute test used in primary care that looks at things like attention, memory, concentration.
And can you please summarize for the jury what the process of taking the MMPI-2 or 3 test looks like?
Sure. So, I first ask if the individual is familiar with it, and then that she can see the answer sheet in the booklet, have her read the formal instructions at the beginning of the test booklet and tell me that she understands them. And then it's a matter of answering about 335 questions where you bubble in on a separate answer sheet, true or false, for those questions. And then I take the results of that and I use the test publisher's official scoring software, which I have on a laptop computer, input those answers, and then generate a statistical report based upon her answers that provides a variety of scales and scores, and then narrative text, meaning it provides a text description of what individuals like with these scores tend to look like, although it doesn't talk specifically about Ms. Ellis. And you would never want to make an opinion about somebody based on just the test. Again, it's a matter of correlating them with your overall evaluation, with the interview and the record review.
Thank you. Your Honor, I'd like to show Trial Exhibit 229 to the witness.
Objection, hearsay.
You don't want to publish it at the point?
Not at this point.
Oh, okay. I thought he had no objection to showing it. Just publish it.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you please turn in the blue binder to Exhibit 229?
Okay, I'm at 229. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you familiar with this document?
Yes. So this is the report of the MMPI-2 psychological test that I administered to Ms. Ellis on July 21st, 2023, and which I provided along with other documents to opposing counsel before my deposition.
And does this document refresh your recollection as to which version of the MMPI-2 test you conducted in Ms. Ellis' case?
Yes, I gave the MMPI-2. That and the MMPI-3 are the most recent and, again, the gold standard tests worldwide in this kind of a context.
Thank you. And that report that you have in front of you, did you create that document yourself?
Well, I created it in the sense that I inputted her answers into the test publisher software on my laptop. I then double-checked the answer through a process that's provided by the software. And then I had the software generate this report, again using statistical algorithm that is intrinsic to the software. I don't personally score any of the scales. I don't personally write out any of the text interpretation that's in it. My job is then, how do I use that information once it's available in an overall assessment?
And is it fair to say that you used this report as an analytical tool in reaching your conclusions with respect to Ms. Ellis?
Yes, again, considering all the information available to me from the records, the exam, the testing, I utilized inductive medical reasoning, a best fit logical reasoning, the same reasoning I would use if I was in an emergency room, if I was a surgeon or I was a radiologist.
Do you use this software and the reports that are generated from it regularly in your psychological evaluations?
Yes, I've used these tests several hundreds of times. I have the highest user rating qualification from both test publishers.
Okay, and do you recall when this particular report was generated?
My best recollection is I generated it, shortly after the examination had been completed, but I just apologize, I don't recall a specific date.
Okay, thank you. Defendant moves to admit Exhibit 229 into evidence.
Section
hearsay.
overruled. Submitted.
Your Honor, may I publish page 2 of Exhibit 229?
All right.
All right, and Dr. Rosenberg, you can see at the top there, I suppose you could look at the binder as well.
If you turn your screen on, the top left button on the top left side, it should be on there.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's much better.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, yes, sir, I can see it now. I wasn't able to see that.
Thank you. If you look at the top of the page, it says validity scales. Can you please explain what that means?
Yes, so these are the most important scales of their type for this in the MMPI-3 of any test in the world, any psychological test. The validity scales look at how somebody is approaching the test. The first two scales, VRIN and TRIN, variable and true response indicator, look at whether somebody understood the test questions and responded to them in a consistent fashion. So those first have to be valid before you can go on to interpret the rest of the test. The remainder of the validity scales, the vast majority of them, look at their F scales because they look at infrequent responses. These scales become more and more elevated if an individual endorses or answers questions endorsing symptoms that are infrequent, meaning that even somebody who actually had that mental disorder would not actually endorse them. And these scales are scored against a large statistical population, cross-section population of the United States. And then the last couple scales, the L scale, looks at a different type of potential manipulation, portraying yourself in an overly positive or virtuous light. And then the last one is just a correction to that.
Thank you. And what do Ms. Ellis's test results in this case show you?
So
And I'm sorry, specifically with respect to the validity scales.
Yeah, so looking at these, it's more fun to do it from memory, but looking at these scales, they demonstrate that when Ms. Ellis took this test, that she generated scale elevations in the range that only reasonably could be interpreted as either severe symptom exaggeration or symptom fabrication. From a psychiatric standpoint, obviously I'm not giving a factual opinion. So if we look at F, the third one over with a T-score of 83, so these are compared against a normal bell curve of statistical scores where a T-score of 50 is in the middle. And every time you go out 10, you're going out another standard deviation. So at a T-score of 83, the F scale that looks at things like anxiety, depression, PTSD, she generated a score more than 3 standard deviations above the norm. And statistically, only 48 people out of 100,000 would actually generate that score, even if they really had the condition. If we then look at the other scales thereafter, the FS scale, S is for somatic, meaning physical symptoms. The FBS, which is the fake bad scale or symptom validity scale, and the RBS scale, those look at physical health symptoms and they look at cognitive symptoms like attention, concentration, primarily if you're evaluating a brain injury claim. And so on those scales, with the understanding that, as I'll discuss, Ms. Ellis has not sought out any type of, from my review of the Kaiser records and my audio recorded interview, any type of physical health problem whatsoever, and certainly hasn't had a brain injury. These elevations are extraordinarily high. The FBS, or fake bad scale elevation, of a T-score of 102, at 5 standard deviations above the norm, only 2 individuals out of 1 billion would actually have that score if he or she had the actual disorder. So these are extremely high. They're far beyond the range of somebody who could just be distressed and is trying to emphasize how distressed she is, or so-called cry for help. These are in the range of elevation that no individual, even with the conditions, would reasonably have at that statistical elevation, putting aside that she doesn't even claim those types of symptoms in the first place.
Thank you. What types of symptoms would that be?
So for the FS, to have an elevation on F sub S, which is somatic or physical, especially a significant elevation, you would have to have a serious physical health condition. Let's say you have cancer, or you recently had a heart attack, or you're in heart failure, or you have uncontrolled diabetes, things like that. FBS is particularly sensitive to symptom fabrication or exaggeration in individuals who've had traumatic brain injuries. But again, even if you had a severe disabling traumatic brain injury and you were in a rehabilitation facility, your elevation would be maybe a T-score of 70, 75. Again, at 102, where it's 2 people in a billion, no individual who even had a brain injury would reasonably endorse that score. Where again, they get elevated the more and more you endorse symptoms that no person who actually has the condition would actually report those symptoms. And then RBS is cognitive. So again, it looks at things like attention, memory, and concentration. And again, hers is elevated in the range of 4 standard deviations. So, it would be well over 100 million to 1 that she would actually have those symptoms.
Thank you. Can you please turn to page 10 of the report?
Of this psych testing report?
Yes. Towards the bottom, you see is written diagnostic considerations.
Yes.
Can you please explain what that section is saying here?
Yes, so again, the report doesn't talk about Ms. Ellis specifically. It talks about, at a statistical level, individuals who have these scales and scores tend to look like this. And the diagnoses that are suggested are rank ordered. They're in the priority of how likely they are. And so the first diagnosis listed is malingering of somatic and or cognitive symptoms, primarily generated by the elevation of the F sub S the fake bad scale and the RBS. And so, and malingering refers to the intentional gross exaggeration or otherwise fabrication or manipulation of symptoms for secondary gain in the field of psychiatry, and is actually in accordance with the American Psychiatric Association's published guidelines.
And again, this section of the report, like everything else, this was generated as a result of the test publisher software. Is that correct?
Yes, the test publisher software, the statistical scoring, which involves hundreds of thousands of individuals, and then detailed mathematical statistical algorithms that are used to score this test and prepare this report.
You testified earlier that there were other psychological tests that you administered. Are the results of those tests similar with respect to symptom exaggeration or fabrication?
Well, I would say yes and no. The other test, the personality assessment inventory, does not have as sensitive of validity scales to detect exaggeration or other manipulation, though it does show some evidence of that. But when we look at the clinical scales on the personality assessment inventory, Ms. Ellis generated such huge elevations for scales like anxiety, physical symptoms, PTSD, depression, again, several deviations above the norm, that make no reasonable sense unless somebody was actually, for example, so ill that she required inpatient psychiatric care on medications, was critically ill or terminally ill with physical health conditions. The other inconsistency is that on the MMPI-2-RF, she scored, accepting her symptoms at face value, she scored very high on symptoms for paranoid thinking at the level of somebody with a paranoid psychotic disorder like schizophrenia. And that was not seen on the PAI. So that would be an inconsistency between them, but it also would be another example of symptom endorsement that makes no reasonable sense except for intentional gross fabrication or outright fabrication of symptoms in this case. At that level of paranoid thinking, again, would be like a uncontrolled schizophrenia requiring acute inpatient care on medication. But by the same token, taking it at face value, it is, from my standpoint, of relevance to the trier of fact in evaluating somebody with that degree of paranoia and suspiciousness, how that individual reacts to or responds in neutral situations, social situations, potential arguments.
You mentioned a high paranoid thinking score. I believe that's correct.
I'm sorry, so what did you say?
Did you mention a high paranoid thinking score? Is that how you phrased it?
Yes, on the three key scales of the MMPI-2 for paranoid thinking, again, typically seen in something like schizophrenia, she had significant elevations on those scales, all three, again, in the range which we see here in the text report, how the report interprets it, at the level of somebody who's a paranoid psychotic with delusions, not just somebody who feels a little stressed or like somebody's looking over her shoulder.
And as a professional and a psychiatrist, how would you interpret that score in this case?
So again, I think there are only two reasonable ways to interpret it. One would be that it's another common manifestation in how somebody in an emotional injury case produces either gross exaggeration or outright fabrication of symptoms in an attempt to look injured. The alternative is that part of somebody's baseline where in day-to-day interactions she interprets normal or neutral interactions as a personal attack. The only other reasonable alternative, taking it at face value, would be she actually has a psychotic mental disorder like paranoid schizophrenia with things like hallucinations, believing that there's a plot to have her killed, satellites are watching her, her phone is bugged, things of that sort.
And based on the other elements of your examination, did you make a conclusion as to which one of those would be true here?
Well, I think reasonably from a psychiatric standpoint, given all the other information available to me, the reasonable interpretation is that it's another example of severe symptom manipulation, exaggeration, or fabrication. But again, it also has to be considered, again, from a factual standpoint for the trier of fact. Does it demonstrate paranoid thinking that can affect how somebody reacts in a situation or a disagreement?
But to be clear, are you diagnosing Ms. Ellis with, for example, schizophrenia?
No, that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Why not?
I should ask that answer.
Well, because in schizophrenia, and obviously there's a spectrum, there are individuals who are very well controlled on medication. I know I've had schizophrenic patients, who are like run corporations and do very well, but the vast majority tend to have very severe and chronic courses, often homeless in mental institutions. And so, but with these levels of scores, if you actually had schizophrenia, you would function at a very low level. You wouldn't be able to maintain reasonable family relationships. You wouldn't be able to hold a job. You wouldn't be able to function in major life activities. And again, you would require psychiatric hospitalization and antipsychotic medication.
Did you diagnose Ms. Ellis with any psychiatric conditions?
No, again, since I equate, for a case like this, emotional injury with have you developed one or more psychiatric disorders as a result of your allegations of the incident with Cardi B, I have no diagnoses for her because she has sustained no emotional injury.
Okay, and apart from the test results, are there any other factors on which you base your conclusion that plaintiff hasn't suffered any mental or emotional injury?
Yes.
What are those?
So the first factor is that, again, I accept Ms. Ellis's report or allegations of what happened that day in that incident, reasonably from a psychiatric standpoint, that would be a stressful or upsetting situation. You might be mad or angry for a day. You might lose some sleep over it. It might be in the back of your mind for a few days. But reasonably, people don't develop psychiatric disorders like an anxiety disorder, depression, from an argument or an unpleasant interaction like that on a single basis. That just makes no reasonable sense. And as we'll discuss, makes even less sense in Ms. Ellis's case because it turns out, although she didn't share them with me when I asked, she's had multiple other traumas in her life, and according to her, those didn't cause emotional problems, so she obviously must have great resilience, and it would make no sense that this much more minor thing somehow would, when most people wouldn't. The other reason is that, well, I have a few reasons, but I promise I'll stop talking soon. Another reason it's important to understand that this doesn't constitute a trauma. Again, accepting Ms. Ellis's report of what happened at face value, it doesn't constitute a trauma. It would be a stressor to some degree on an interpersonal basis, but under the American Psychiatric Association standards for what constitutes a trauma, for example, to be able to develop PTSD, this does not meet that. It has to be something like life-threatening accident, illness, witness to violence. So, for example, physical or sexual abuse growing up, kidnapping, sexual assault, military combat. These things are traumas, and they can lead to PTSD. An argument or unpleasant interpersonal interaction isn't a trauma and can't lead to PTSD. And that's particularly important for us since some of Ms. Ellis's most dramatic scores on the psych testing have been profound elevations of PTSD scales, again, in a range where no individual who actually had PTSD would reasonably generate those scores.
Are there any other factors?
Yes, so another important factor is, again, in accordance with the published, generally accepted guidelines of the American Psychiatric Association in our diagnostic manual, whenever there is a psychiatrist or psychologist is doing an evaluation in a legal context where financial gain or some other type of secondary gain is at stake, you always have to consider and rule out the risk of intentional manipulation for financial gain. And in that context, in this case, Ms. Ellis has demonstrated a significant pattern of inconsistencies and other symptom validity issues. For example, in my audio recorded examination, again, there's an audio recorded record, she told me, with the exception of a couple sessions of family therapy when she was 12 because her sister had been sexually assaulted by a neighbor, she could not recall a single trauma in her entire life growing up. Couldn't remember a single one in response to my detailed questioning. Whereas, for example, in her deposition, she reported that she was a victim growing up of domestic violence in the home, gang violence, other violence. Schoolmates were shot and killed. She was physically mugged in high school. Her car was broken into several times. None of those were reported to me. So those represent an important mismatch in a legal case where an individual potentially tries to make everything about the incident that can be compensable in a lawsuit. Another example along the same lines is in my audio recorded exam, she told me that all of her emotional problems from the day of the incident, in this case, February 2018 to present, have been entirely due to what happened with Cardi B and absolutely nothing else. And she couldn't identify any other stressors in recent years that could be relevant. Whereas, again, in her deposition testimony, the same year, January 2018, her mother was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. Later in the year, her mother had radiation therapy for cancer.
Objection, right to privacy of the mother.
If you want to describe the issues more generically.
My apologies, Your Honor.
Sure.
And the same year, one of her friends committed suicide. And then, again, none of those things were shared with me. So that would be another example. I do have a couple more.
Setting aside that mismatch that you're discussing, are there any other general topics, general factors on which you base your conclusion?
Yes. So another factor that I have to consider as a psychiatrist and medical doctor is there a mismatch across sources of information, considering the records I've reviewed, the psych testing I did, the interview. So another factor, which is very important, is to correlate somebody's subjective, meaning what she reports, emotional injury claims of injury, with real-life day-to-day function as a more objective measure. So in this case, if I accepted Ms. Ellis's reports at face value, particularly with the psych testing, she would have profound, off-the-charts PTSD, profound disabling depression, anxiety, profound disabling physical health conditions. Whereas when I compare that to her real-life function, she's had intact relationships with her, loving relationships with her family, which would not be reasonable in the context particularly of profound PTSD. That she's, in a few months after the altercation and continuing to the present, she's had a job that not only has been higher paying for her, but has been more demanding, requires top, excellent interpersonal skills, how to deal with people, troubled youths, and emotional resilience, and has, per her deposition, performed it well. Again, total mismatch. She also reported to me that since the incident, she's traveled to Hawaii, Las Vegas, Mexico, though she couldn't remember, supposedly, that if she had gone to other places or how many times. And again, even if you look in the psych testing report that was generated, particularly with severe PTSD, you don't want to leave your house, you don't want to interact with people, you withdraw from your family, the future looks bleak to you, you don't have a job. These things are completely contrary.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, Cross.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Alice. Good afternoon, Dr. Rosenberg.
Good afternoon, sir.
I took your deposition on August 5th, and we went over all of your opinions, correct?
We went over all my opinions, but it's very clear that you didn't ask me for all the factors in support of my opinions.
Okay. But I did take your deposition, and Took about 2 hours, a little bit less, correct?
Yes, sir. You were extremely polite and professional, which I appreciate.
Thank you, though. So you testified today that you billed $30,000 in this case. Is that often the charges that you bill for the type of case that's litigated and without the time for trial, of course, up until trial? Is that a reasonable amount of billing in a case like this?
I would say in a complex case that spans over years, that's probably true of maybe 25% of my litigation matters that I work on.
Okay. And in addition to the $30,000 that you received, you were also paid $1,800 by my office, correct?
Yes, sir, for my deposition fees.
And for today, you're being paid another $10,000 to prepare and appear here and testify and go back and forth. Is that fair?
I think that's reasonable, yes, sir.
Could it be higher than that amount?
I don't think so. I think that's a reasonable estimate.
So my estimate is about $40,000, correct?
Yes, sir, I think that's very reasonable.
And in the past 29 years, you testified at your deposition, or I can ask you now, isn't it true that in 70 to 80% of cases you testified on behalf of the defense up until recently, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And there's a well-known lawyer that we all know, no need to mention names, but recently he's been giving you some more work, so your 70 to 80% has gone down to 60%, correct?
More work on the plaintiff side, that's correct.
And as far as the attorneys, Cardi B had an attorney before Mr. Kossoff and other lawyers. In working with their firm, you worked in 5 other cases with them?
That sounds about right, sir, yes.
And with their new law firm, Davis, Wright, and Tremaine, with Mr. Peterson, Mr. Lamb, and all the other attorneys involved with them, you worked in 15 cases with their office, correct?
Objection. Same facts.
Yes, over the past 20 years or so, that's correct, though I've never worked with these particular attorneys before.
And would you agree that in 90% of cases that you were hired in, you basically remain the expert on the case and you don't withdraw, correct? About 90%.
I apologize, I don't recall a case in which I have withdrawn.
So are you saying that every single time the defense hires you in a case, you remain the expert in that case without giving them an opinion before you testify?
Objection. This states.
Is that what you were saying, sir? So when you were hired by Cardi B's office, by her lawyers, when were you hired?
I believe it was sometime early in 2023.
And when you were hired in 2023, did you ask, well, strike that. Did you examine Emani Ellis in 2023, right? Or was it 2024? Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, sir. I believe it was July 21st of 2023.
Okay. Did you ever do any type of examination on Cardi B at any point?
Given that would be inappropriate since she wasn't the plaintiff with a psychiatric claim, I did not, sir.
Right, but she was involved in some type of altercation, correct?
Objection. Incomplete.
I don't think it's relevant. It's not relevant whether she has any damages or not.
And what is your understanding as to what is the basis of this claim? What is Emani Ellis's claim? Why is she here in court?
My understanding is that she felt that she was verbally mistreated by Cardi B, including foul or demeaning language, that Cardi B touched her face with a long fingernail and caused some injury to her face, and that also resulted a month later in Ms. Ellis being fired from her security job.
Okay. Do you know, in psychiatry, do you treat patients that deal with assault and battery?
In my patient care practice, putting aside legal matters?
Yes.
Let me just object for vague and ambiguous as to deal with?
Assistant.
I'll strike that. Have you treated patients for injuries related to assault and battery in your career since 1994 as a psychiatrist?
A few hundred times, from very simple to extremely severe injuries.
When you say simple, what is an example? What are you saying to us?
Yes. So by simple, I don't mean to say it's not important or it's not serious to the person, but I mean, for example, let's say somebody being pushed or a hand on a shoulder in an aggressive way or something like that, all the way up to people who are beaten and kicked on the ground with skull fractures and being hit over the head with clubs and pistol whips, a variety of things, stabbed.
And when you treated the various patients, would you treat them more than once? The ones that you're speaking of?
Typically, I mean, it depends on the setting. As a medical doctor, I used to spend a lot of time in emergency rooms, so there it might be once. But over the course of my career, overwhelmingly, particularly 22 years in a nonprofit clinic in Van Nuys, I would treat them on a repeated basis. Some of them I would treat for many years, although those tended to be individuals with major mental disorders like bipolar or schizophrenia.
Okay, and if you could just look at the other binder on your left, please.
Pardon me one sec, sir.
Sure.
Yes, sir. Where should I look?
Yes, if we can look at Exhibit 1-003.
I'm there, sir.
At the time of your deposition, had you reviewed this page?
Objection. Beyond the scope of direct.
As best I recall, sir, I had not reviewed this particular page.
Okay. Do you remember in your deposition, I asked you if you'd reviewed all of Miss Emani Ellis' medical bill? You remember that?
I apologize. I vaguely remember that, and I don't remember what my answer was.
Is he designated for medical bill?
No.
Then I don't know why we're going down this road.
Okay. Thank you, Ron. If we can go to Exhibit number 2.
I'm at Exhibit number 2, sir.
You reviewed the medical records and bills of Dr. McKinsey, correct?
Yes, I haven't done so recently, but I did earlier in this case.
And we went over this together at the time of your deposition, and you expressed that for purposes of workers' compensation, the treatment was reasonable, but maybe for this case it's not. Do you remember testifying to that, Doctor?
Objection beyond the scope of direct and also beyond the scope of this expert's designation.
Do you have his designation?
It's in the trial.
What's in the binder?
Tab 8.
The objection sustained.
Thank you. As far as any type of physical injury, isn't it true that you are not giving any type of expert opinion about physical injury, correct?
Aside from her inconsistent reports of whether or not she was actually touched on the face by the fingernail, that's correct, sir. I'm not a plastic surgeon. Other than that, I'm not giving any testimony with regard to physical injuries.
And when she came to your office, did you examine her face to see if she had a scar?
As I do
So
with,
yes or no? I'm sorry.
well, I observed her across the table for several hours. I didn't specifically examine her face.
Did you,
beyond that.
did you have an intention to look for the scar on her face? Yes or no?
Yes.
Did you physically go up to her face and look to see if there was a scar?
No, sir.
That's it. Are you giving any opinions about Miss Emani's physical scar on her face, whether she has one now, she had one from this incident, anything to do with her plastic surgery? Giving any of the opinions about that?
Objection, incomplete hypothetical, also beyond the scope. Also recommended.
Okay, and in formulating your opinions, did you review Miss Emani Ellis's medical records?
Yes, sir, and those were extremely important to me, actually.
Okay. And you reviewed the medical records from Nicole McKenzie, is that correct? Is that her? Do you remember that?
I haven't recently, but I have in the past, yes, sir.
You can look at it. Did you review Exhibit 2?
Yes, sometime before my deposition, but I've not looked at them since.
And you reviewed Exhibit 3?
Yes, sometime before my deposition, but not since.
Okay. And you reviewed Exhibit 4? And Exhibit 5?
Let me take a look here. Pardon me one second.
Objection, compound.
Overruled.
As best I recall, yes, but not recently.
And in formulating your opinions, did all of these exhibits assist you in your formulating opinions and coming up with your opinions for us today?
The Kaiser records were extremely important because she had several visits and didn't report a single emotional problem, didn't ask for any care related to this case.
Objection, non-responsive.
So it's a yes or no question. Did you rely on the records in forming your opinions?
Only the Kaiser records.
I didn't ask you about Kaiser.
Oh, I'm sorry. You asked me about the Kaiser records earlier. You mean just the ones that I'm looking at in the notebook?
I never said the word Kaiser. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess when you said medical records, that's what I was interpreting.
Yeah, I'm talking about the medical records from Dr. McKinsey, a psychologist, the medical records from Dr. Avila, a psychologist, the medical records from Dr. Mulliken, a plastic surgeon, and the medical records from Dr. Norman, pain management doctor. Did you review these records? You testified a moment ago, yes. And the question is, did you use these 4 medical records in formulating any of your opinions that you testified to today here in court?
No, sir.
Okay, so when you said there was inconsistencies, didn't you mean that, well, strike that. When you said there's inconsistencies, you found those in the medical records that I just asked you about? Isn't that true?
Maybe I had previously. I don't recall if that's in my deposition testimony, but I did not consider those in formulating my opinions for today. It was the Kaiser records.
Okay, the Kaiser records that you're speaking of. Isn't it true that the Kaiser records, any medical treatment that Emani Ellis received at Kaiser, it has nothing to do with this case. It has nothing to do with assault and battery.
Objection.
It's something totally unrelated, correct?
Objection, speculation, hearsay.
So we're problem solved. Sustained.
Why did Emani Ellis go to Kaiser Hospital?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
Do you know why, from reading the medical records and bills, do you know why Miss Emani Ellis went to the Kaiser Permanente Hospital?
Objection, six objection.
Overruled. You know the answer?
Yes, Your Honor. The answer is yes.
Okay. Why did she go to Kaiser Permanente Hospital?
Same objection.
Overruled.
Well, April 2022 was for an annual history and physical, a comprehensive. November 2022, comprehensive history and physical. April 2023 with a PA was for reported hand pain.
Everything that you just told us right now about Kaiser Permanente Hospital, as a medical doctor, and in reviewing all these records that you testified you read, wouldn't you agree that those medical treatments have nothing to do with this incident? Agreed? Yes or no?
Objection. Very ambiguous.
Overruled.
I disagree. They're extremely important.
I didn't ask you if they're important. I agree they're important. Going to a hospital is important. My question is, if the medical treatment that was received at Kaiser Permanente Hospital, if it has any relation to medical treatment received by Emani Ellis related to this incident that occurred on February 24th, 2018. Was it?
For my purposes, yes.
Okay. So are you telling us that Miss Emani Ellis went to the hospital in 2022 and 2023 because of injuries related to this incident? Is that what you're testifying to, Doctor?
No.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. What you are telling us is you used some of the medical records from Kaiser Permanente Hospital to formulate some of your opinions in this case. Is that true? Maybe
Yes,
I'm
sir.
wrong. Okay, that's true.
Yes, thank you.
And you use that for your different type of studies or MMPI studies and all types of different testing that you did, correct?
Objection. Very ambiguous.
Overruled. Sustained.
But just so we're clear, the actual treatment didn't have to do with assault and battery or a physical injury. Is that correct?
Objection. Very ambiguous.
It's been asked and answered several times.
All right, and then I want some clarity on the other four documents. The psychological. Well, let me ask you this: as a psychiatrist, do you believe that psychological care with no medication is a respected medicine?
As a general principle, yes.
Have you referred your own patients to receive psychological care?
Oh, innumerable times, yes.
And whether it's a PsyD or PhD or some other type of psychologist that's licensed, you agree that patients can receive medical care from those types of professionals and actually benefit from that type of care. You agree?
Well, it's not medical care, but I do agree that they can receive very helpful, effective mental health care.
So are you saying mental health care is not medical care?
Objection. This case is
Overruled.
In general, unless it's a psychiatrist, mental health care is much broader and refers to non-medical healthcare providers, psychologists, LMFT, social workers.
Do you believe that patients benefit from mental health treatment with no medication?
Overruled.
For the appropriate indication, yes, sir.
And how does it help if they go to a psychologist and they talk about their problems? From your perspective, you're a psychiatrist. You are the man who would know. So when a patient goes to a psychologist and they talk about their problems, they explain their problems, why does that help the patient? Why?
Objection. Very ambiguous.
I don't know that it's relevant. So if you can establish some foundation as to why we're talking about other patients.
Did Emani Ellis receive psychological treatment in this case, based on your review of the medical records and medical bills, from two different psychologists? True?
Yes.
And from your review of the medical records, she went to 7 treatments with Nicole McKenzie and other doctors from her office. Is that true?
Objection. Beyond the scope of this expert's designation.
Overruled.
That sounds about right, sir, yes.
And she went to Dr. Avila, another psychologist. She went to his office and got treatment from other providers that work under him for a total of 12 treatments, correct?
Objection. Beyond the scope of this expert's designation.
Overruled.
That sounds about right, yes, sir.
And those 2 psychologists, setting aside this case, is there any reason why you as a professional would not refer a patient to these 2 psychologists?
Objection.
I withdraw the question. if we were to talk about, do you remember at the time of your deposition, you said to me that you testified under oath that you worked alongside Dr. Mulliken in cases before? True? About 10 times?
Overruled.
Well, when you say alongside, I've been on the same side and on the opposite side in several legal cases, not like next to him in surgery.
I understand. But you worked alongside him, meaning you've worked on the same cases in about 10 different times, correct? That was your testimony.
Yes, I don't know if it's 10 on the same side or 10 in total on both sides, but happy to accept whatever you say.
Right. And you're affiliated with UCLA?
Not anymore. I was a professor for 16 years, but not anymore.
Okay. And Dr. Mulliken is also affiliated with UCLA? Is that how you know him?
I don't know if he's currently affiliated with UCLA or not, sir. He certainly has excellent qualifications.
Right. You said that at your deposition. Your words were, he has very impressive credentials, correct?
Yes.
Do you know Dr. Mulliken to be a clinical associate professor at UCLA?
Objection, speculation, beyond this expert's designation.
At your deposition, you stated that you cannot say that the diagnosis was malingering. Do you remember testifying to that?
Yes.
And what does that mean?
What does malingering mean?
Well, yeah, sure. I'm sorry.
I didn't know if you meant that or what I
Well,
meant by saying I couldn't diagnose it.
Why don't we start with what does malingering mean?
So malingering is an official diagnosis of the American Psychiatric Association. It's not a disorder, but it's a diagnosis which refers to a pattern of intentional exaggeration, fabrication, or other manipulation in a legal context for secondary gain. For example, in a criminal case, it could be trying to appear psychotic to avoid criminal punishment. In a litigation like this, typically for monetary gain.
And you testified at the deposition that you cannot say that the diagnosis was malingering. Do you remember saying that?
Ms. Ellis, absolutely, I did say that, sir.
Do you remember meeting Miss Ellis? Do you remember the encounter?
Yes.
Do you remember telling Miss Ellis that you were sorry about what she went through? Did you tell her that?
Yes, based upon her description, I told her I was sorry what she had been through, and it was a pleasure to meet her.
And the testing that you did was in 2023, 5 years later?
Yes, sir.
Would it have been beneficial to have done your testing and interview and all the different things shortly after this incident?
I think that would have been beneficial as well, but also doing it again later is also equally beneficial.
Okay. And do you remember I asked you about discovery? If you had reviewed any discovery and you said you had not. Fair?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you actually asked that the defense provide you with the discovery so you could review it and that you would then give us additional opinions. You remember testifying to that in your deposition?
Objection, this state's testimony.
Overruled.
I don't recall, but I know I said that if I received additional information of any type, I'd happily review it, consider it, and it could modify my opinions.
Have you received those discovery responses?
No, sir.
Do you remember also testifying at your deposition that it would be beneficial to your opinions to see Emani Ellis a second time? Do you remember testifying to that?
Yes.
And that if you saw her a second time, that it could further modify your opinions in this case, correct?
Objection, this state's testimony.
Overruled.
Potentially, yes, sir.
And between 2018 and 2023, before you saw Emani Ellis, between that 5-year time span, her psychological or psychiatric condition could have changed, correct? She could have got better. She could have recovered, right? True?
I'm sorry, between 18 and 23?
Yes.
That's certainly a possibility.
Okay. And when she saw Dr. McKenzie for 7 visits, and other doctors that work in Dr. McKenzie's office, those 7 visits, you said that psychological care helps. Maybe it helped her.
Objection calls for spectator.
Possible, correct?
Sustained.
Do you believe that Miss Emani Ellis benefited from the psychological care she received from Dr. McKenzie?
Objection
Yes or no?
calls for speculation.
Sustained.
And she also received, from your review of the medical records, 12 visits from Dr. Avila's office and staff. Correct? You testified to that. So would you agree that 7 plus 12 is 19 visits of psychological care? True?
Yes, I feel very confident in that. Yes.
Okay. Appreciate that. When you refer your patients out for psychological treatment, do you usually give a limit on the course of care, or maybe 5 visits, 10 visits, 12 visits, or you just refer them out to psychological providers?
I'm usually quite precise, but it also depends on the type of psychological care or psychotherapy. Some are time limited on purpose. Others could go on over the course of somebody's lifetime.
All right, that's why we focus on what is opinion time.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Okay. Also, we talked about the distinction in your deposition between factual opinion and psychiatric opinion. And you said that you cannot say what did or did not occur in the incident. You remember testifying to that?
Yes.
So basically what that means, just to break it down, is you don't know how this incident occurred. Is that fair?
Outside of a psychiatric context, that's correct. Factually, it's none of my business to determine what happened.
Okay. And isn't it true that you don't know if Miss Emani Ellis was assaulted and battered by Cardi B? You just don't know, correct?
Factually, that's correct, sir.
And you also don't know if Emani Ellis was cut on her face by Cardi B. You don't know that, correct?
Objection beyond the scope of this evidence.
Sustained.
Have you ever spoken with Cardi B at all during the course of this case?
No, sir. I've never spoken to her or had any other type of communication with her.
Would it have been beneficial for you to hear Cardi B's version of what happened in this case? Would that help you in your expert opinion?
I'd certainly be happy to weigh that and give it consideration, but my focus was on emotional injuries of the plaintiff, Ms. Ellis, not on an evaluation of Cardi B.
Understood, but would it have been beneficial to at least hear her version of what occurred in the case? Would that help you?
Objections.
I withdraw the question. Thank you, Doctor. No further questions.
It's a privilege to see you again, sir.
Thank you, Doctor.
All right, redirect.
Just a few questions. You testified earlier as to your understanding of the facts of this case. Could you please explain what sources that's based on?
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
I'm
sir.
sorry. You testified earlier as to your understanding of the facts of this case. Could you please explain what sources your understanding is based on?
Yes, so it's based upon my review of Ms. Ellis's deposition, the available medical and mental health records I reviewed. Again, with the understanding several of them I haven't reviewed recently. It's also based upon my detailed audio recorded several-hour interview with Ms. Ellis. And again, in the course of doing my interview, I accept hypothetically at face value that what she's telling me is correct. And then later I form my opinions, which may include opinions regarding symptom validity. But it's not my role to make a factual determination.
And all of those sources that you've reviewed, the facts come from Ms. Ellis or statements that Ms. Ellis made. Is that correct?
Yes.
And does that make sense to you that you would rely on Ms. Ellis's own statements in forming a diagnosis or lack of diagnosis as to Ms. Ellis?
Objection outside the scope.
Over.
Well, if it was a patient care setting, you typically rely only on what the patient tells you and accept at face value, that the person's there for help. In a legal context, it's not appropriate for me to accept what somebody says at face value without corroborating it against psychological testing and available records.
You testified that you did not formally diagnose Ms. Ellis with malingering. What does a formal diagnosis of malingering require, and why did you not? Scratch that. Why did you not diagnose Ms. Ellis with malingering?
Because although Ms. Ellis meets the fundamental criteria of, from a psychiatric standpoint, of gross symptom exaggeration or outright fabrication and a pattern of inconsistencies across information, she's had so many traumas in her life, both growing up and other losses and traumas around 2018, that I can't rule out that she has some sort of emotional problems at a mild level, but they just wouldn't be related to this case.
You evaluated Ms. Ellis 5 years after the incident, according to Ms. Ellis. Is
Yes.
that correct? In your professional opinion, what is the likelihood that Ms. Ellis would not present with any emotional or psychological injuries up to that date that would be related to the incident, but then after this date would suddenly develop emotional or psychological injuries related to that incident?
Objection, vague and ambiguous, unintelligible, compound.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I didn't hear it.
Over.
It makes no reasonable sense, and there's no significant likelihood that that would be the case from a medical standpoint. Again, the incident itself, taken at face value, constitutes a situational stressor, a stressful interpersonal interaction. It certainly does not constitute a trauma, as I've discussed. And for somebody to not have a psychiatric disorder and emotional injury for 5 years thereafter, but have significant evidence of symptom manipulation, and also to have the resilience to, by her own accord, report not have psychiatric problems from all the real trauma she has had in her life at other times, it makes no sense that she would suddenly develop it at this point.
Thank you. Give me just a minute. Nothing further. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Recross?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
For any type of other types of injuries that you brought up, someone who was shot at school, a family member got sick, all these other things that you brought up, where did you obtain that information from?
It's actually very ambiguous.
Over.
And it's also outside the scope. I've found it.
Sustained.
Did you see any other psychological records or bills related to Emani Ellis prior to this incident?
Outside the scope.
Sustained.
You generated a report, correct, on November 22nd of 24?
Objection outside the scope.
Sustained. So there's basically one line of questioning relating to whether or not your client had a later onset of symptoms. So I think you're limited to that.
Yes, ma'am. When you said, when counsel just asked you some questions about inconsistencies and malingering, you said there were inconsistencies. Where were there these inconsistencies?
Was it the time when you interviewed her one time, or was it in the medical records?
Objection outside the scope.
Overruled.
As I had tried to explain, it was a combination of my review of the records, the psychological testing, and my interview, comparing those as well as intrinsic validity issues within some of those sources.
Which medical record shows an inconsistency? Which one?
The extremely important Kaiser medical records.
What does the Kaiser medical record say that's inconsistent?
That in, again, April 2022, she went for complete history and physical. She specifically denied any kind of mental health issues, specifically denied anxiety, sleep problems, had no reported mental health problems, no request for care. Same thing in November 2022 with Dr. Ahmad. And then in April 2023, when she went in for her hand pain with the nurse practitioner, they also did a review of systems and asked her about symptoms across the board, which is typical for Kaiser. Absolutely no emotional problems whatsoever, no request for mental health assistance.
Okay. So are you telling us that when Emani Ellis went to Kaiser Permanente on the date of November 29, 22, respectfully, when she went there for vaginal discharge, she should have told that doctor that she had psychological issues. Is that what you're saying, doctor?
Objection beyond.
Yes or no?
Overruled.
It was a different entry. I'm not talking
That's
about
not
that
what
entry.
I'm asking, doctor. Again, should I repeat what I said, or can you just
I don't
answer
think
the
he said he
question?
based his opinion on that record, Councilman.
You reviewed this record, Kaiser Permanente, correct? You reviewed it. You just testified about it. 161 pages of records. And you said that these records show inconsistencies. And now my question is, are you telling me that my client went to Kaiser Permanente for vaginal discharge on November 29th of 22, and at that visit, she's supposed to tell the doctor that she has psychological problems? Is that your testimony, doctor?
Objection. Argumentative.
Assisting.
Are you telling us that every time someone sees a doctor, medical doctor for a cough, sees a dentist for their broken tooth, sees a podiatrist for the broken toe, they have to each time tell the doctor, I have an emotional injury, I have a psychological injury to that medical doctor? Is that what you mean?
Objection. Argumentative.
Assisting.
What do you mean by inconsistencies in the Kaiser records? Tell us in your own words.
Well, I just mentioned as example 3 key entries where she went. 2 of them were for history and physical and general checkups where everything was covered.
Show me in the book. Show me in the book. Blue book?
Okay, why don't you let him finish the answer before you ask him the next question?
Yes, sir.
So,
Were you done, Doctor?
no, Your Honor, thank you. So again, one was April 2022, Dr. King. The next was November 2022, Dr. Ahmed. The next was nurse practitioner Leon, April 2023, where these are records where, for Kaiser electronic medical records, they asked about other types of conditions, and there were no complaints at all from her that she had a mental health problem or was asking for any kind of care, despite these profound elevations on her psych testing. And in that first one with Dr. King, April 2022, she actually specifically denied problems with insomnia or anxiety, which covers a significant aspect of her symptoms.
Doctor, my request is you show me in these 161 pages where it says what you're saying so that I can confirm so myself. It's in front of you in the blue book under Exhibit 212. You're more than welcome to look at it and show it so
Objection.
that we know the truth.
Objection, Your Honor.
I withdraw the question. Let's go to another issue, Doctor. So, if the plaintiff's emotional injury ended before she went to Kaiser, would you agree that there would be no inconsistency because the psychological injury ended prior to that medical visit? You agree with that?
Objection. Speculation outside of the scope of the
Overruled.
It makes no reasonable sense. It's not possible.
Why is it not possible? Why can't she recover? She could have recovered before she went to the Kaiser. She could have recovered, couldn't she have?
Which question would you like me to answer?
Could Miss Emani Ellis have recovered in 2021 or 2022 before she went to Kaiser Hospital? Is that possible? Yes or no?
Objection, incomplete hypothetical.
Overruled.
Taking her symptoms at face value, it's not possible and it's contradictory.
So if in her mind, in her brain, she felt that she recovered after seeing these psychologists, why would she tell Kaiser that she has a psychological problem if she recovered?
I'm sorry, counsel. So she does an exam with him in 23?
No, Your Honor.
When did she see him?
Yes, that is.
Okay. And you're saying that she recovered prior to that, but then had the onset of symptoms when she's with him?
My question is if the plaintiff recovered in 2022, before she went to Kaiser Permanente Hospital, if she had recovered, would there be any reason to tell Kaiser she has an emotional injury? Yes or no?
It makes no sense.
I understand, but if it was
Okay.
true.
All right, I think we're done here. Do you have anything else?
In 2023, when Miss Emani Ellis saw you, did she tell you she was still experiencing emotional injuries from this incident?
Yes, in both the interview and particularly the testing.
And when she told you she was suffering from emotional injuries, did she believe that you're a psychiatrist? Did she know that?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
Did you disclose to Emani
Okay,
Ellis?
we're beyond the scope here. Why don't you focus on what was in the redirect?
You said there were some inconsistencies in the Kaiser records. Isn't it true that when Emani Ellis went to Kaiser Permanente Hospital, she went there for reasons other than psychological reasons?
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
In fact, aside from, well, strike, I withdraw that question. The first doctor you said, Dr. King, that she saw? Dr. King, right?
It wasn't the first doctor she saw, but it was first of my 3 examples. That was April 2022, sir.
Fine. When she saw Dr. King, what did she see Dr. King for?
Objection.
I think we've fully exhausted the scope of this line of questioning. Do you have anything else?
Aside from the inconsistencies that you reviewed, well, actually, let me ask you. The inconsistencies that you're telling us about in the record, in the Kaiser records, these are non-psychological records, correct? Is that fair? I'll close with this.
Objection.
If you say yes to that, we're done.
Objection,
I just want the truth.
Overruled.
Yes, sir.
No further questions.
All right. Any questions from the jury? I don't see a hand. All right. Can this witness be excused?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.